All right, and we're back. It is another Neville and Chill solo stream tonight. We've got a fun show planned for you all. Tonight we are talking about the teachers. A little opportunity to show some gratitude to those beautiful souls who have come along at the most perfect points in our journey to shine some light at exactly the moment we needed them. That's going to be the topic for tonight. We're going to talk about the teachers. And to set the mood here, get a little background music going here. Let's see. Okay. That's nice. Hello, everyone who has joined me in the comment section. I saw we have Anna with us. Anna is a retired elementary school teacher. Welcome, Anna. Thank you for your service. Such an important job. I can remember, as I'm sure all of us can, very vividly, some of my elementary school teachers, including my mother, because I was homeschooled for a couple of years in elementary school. So my mother, I would say, was my first elementary school teacher, but I can definitely remember the face. I don't know if I can pull the name right now, but I can definitely remember the face of one of my other notable elementary school teachers. They definitely have an impact on us, and it's such an important thing. And I see we have Stasio. Always hanging with us here at Neville and Chill. Welcome, Stasio. So it is Tuesday night. We are chilling tonight. I have had such an amazing couple of days. I had an awesome weekend. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about it as we get started here, entering the Chillverse. So I had the opportunity to see my favorite live musical artist 3 nights back to back in my city this past weekend. And it was an amazing experience. And the reason why I'm going to talk about it tonight is because this is Neville and Chill. And the Neville part of this equation, Neville and Chill, is that imagination creates reality. And everything we talk about in this space comes from that premise, that imagination creates reality, that consciousness is the only reality, and that everything that we are aware of is a phenomena of consciousness. Now, for some of you, you're probably like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Why would you even have to say that? Well, let's also acknowledge that there are other models of the universe. Some people seem to think that consciousness emerges out of matter, that matter has become conscious. And that's one model of the polyverse. But in this space specifically, we believe that matter is actually a phenomena of consciousness. That's where this concept, imagination creates reality, comes from. So a couple of years ago, let's see, it was, okay. So this particular music artist who has been my favorite for a very long time, I was introduced to this artist in 2011, I would say. And the name of the artist is Pretty Lights. Pretty Lights. You can kind of get an idea of what the stage presence is like just based on the name, Pretty Lights. And I was introduced to his music by some friends of mine. Handed me a CD, mixed CD. We did that back in the day, a little mixtape on CD. And I had a car, and I had a CD changer in the car. So they handed me these CDs. It was their gift. Popped them in, started listening to them. And there was these 2 songs in particular that I really loved, but I didn't know how to figure out who it was that had made the songs. This was, 2011. There was not a lot of the things that we have today. Eventually, I was able to use Shazam to figure out who the artist was, and it was Pretty Lights. These 2 particular songs on this mixed CD, I was like, these songs are amazing. Such a jam, such a vibe. I love them. I want to know more about the artist that makes them. Figured it out. Found out that he gives out all of his music for free. Pretty Lights. And really started to get into the Pretty Lights vibe, I guess you could say. It's like its own thing. Went to a couple of shows, Had a great time. I was traveling a lot during that time in my life, a lot of driving. So Pretty Lights albums were my most frequent road trip accompaniment, my road trip companion. Pretty Lights albums. So I was, just loving it. Had a lot of beautiful memories associated with this music. And somewhere around 2018, the front man, Derek Vincent Smith of the band Pretty Lights, just kind of vanished, just kind of disappeared, just left social media, stopped touring, stopped making music. All of his accounts went dark. And just kind of like literally vanished from the scene, and nobody really knew what happened to him. I mean, we figured out that he was still alive, but like just clearly not making music, just kind of like, disappeared from the scene. So everybody just kind of assumed that like maybe the band was done. That was it. Well, it was December of 2022, and I was listening to one of my favorite albums from Pretty Lights. And I was hit with this overwhelming desire. I was like, I need this man to come back and start making music again. And I in that moment, I cast an imaginal act, and I was like, Derek Vincent Smith is coming back. He's coming back to music. He's got so many beautiful gifts to give to this world. And I am manifesting his return. I am manifesting him going on tour. I am manifesting, being able to see him in another concert. Like, Derek Vincent Smith is back. And so I had this burning desire for that, did my imaginal act. And the imaginal act specifically was thanking him for coming back to music. Okay. About 6 months later, so this is not even 6 months, I would say probably 4 months later. So it's like December 2022. So about 4 months later, so it was spring 2023. He comes back, pops up on social media, and immediately drops tour dates and starts his tour and starts live streaming all of his shows at every stop, always live streaming and like full production live streaming all of his shows on Twitch. So all of 2023 and all throughout this year, I had the opportunity to watch the live streams. We call it the couch swirl, right? So the style of music, it's swirl. That's the term we're using for it. We swirl. So it's literally weaves in all different genres. It's got kind of an EDM funky type base to it, foundation to it, and then every show is live produced on stage. It's not just press play and dance. It's literally like there's creation happening on the stage, and so every show is different. Every time they play the song, it is unique, and it's just very, very awesome. I was so thrilled that he came back, and it was one of the highlights of 2023. And so naturally, when he announced in 2024 they were going to do 3 days in my city, my partner and I had to go and had to be there. So starting this whole story, right? Like, literally manifested this man coming back, assembling his band, and making music again. So that's like, check. And then there's a couple other really awesome manifestations. So one of them is that there's this guy on YouTube who posts the recordings of all of the live streams as a service to the community, just gathers them off of Twitch, posts them in high quality, great sound on YouTube. And I was like, I want to thank this guy. I want to thank the guy who handles the YouTube, because, a lot of times I'll just put on a YouTube recording and just, hang out and listen to a recording of one of the shows throughout my day. And so I'm like really grateful that someone has taken the time to edit these recordings from on YouTube. It's like, I want to thank this guy. So I started thinking about how I could do that. And I came up with the idea to make a sign, to literally make a sign that I could hold up at the concert, so that when he was editing the video afterwards, he'd be like, oh, that dude, like, you'd feel like called out, right? Well, the polyverse had one better for me. So I did not have to make a sign. Instead, through an amazing bridge of incidents, I actually walked right up and was introduced to him, to this guy directly, and I got to give him a hug and thank him personally, which was awesome. That was a fun manifestation. That was the universe saying, "Oh, you want to thank this guy? How about you like literally meet him?" That was cool. And yeah, it's just a really good time, and a lot of instant manifestations like that. I'll give you another example. So on their stage set, they have crystals. They have quartz crystals as part of their stage design. And these 3 days were unofficially the last days of the tour. They do have one more performance on New Year's Eve, but it's basically the last days of the tour. And so on night 2, I saw Derek come out from behind the booth, and he took a couple of crystals from the stage set and tossed them into the crowd. And so I was like, I'm going to manifest him throwing one of these quartz crystals to me or my partner. You know, we're standing next to each other. One of those crystals is coming home with us. So I just, in my imagination, held the crystal in my hand. And it was the next night that he came off from behind the booth and picked up a crystal and literally threw it straight to my partner so that she could, so I could hold it in my hand, right? So it's like instant manifestations. That was really fun. And it definitely, like, this experience of being able to hang out with all these other people who are really into the band and into the music, and, you know, just felt like getting to sing and dance with all these people was really just such a beautiful vibe, and a great vacation just to chill and really relish the juice that is life, the beauty that is life. Like this is why we do these things, and to be able to use imagination to create more beauty. That's really what this all comes down to. This opportunity to use our imagination to create more beauty, not just to solve problems. Yes, we can solve problems, right? You can break something and then decide that it's, you want to revise it, no longer broken, right? Return it to its original condition, right? Lose something. I don't want that to be lost. I'm choosing to find it, right? We can definitely be, problem solution, but we can also just use it in this way where we just create beauty. We can just decide on the fly the types of experiences that we desire to have, and then, experience them in our imagination, and then allow the world to reflect back to us what we're putting out, through imagination. All right, let's see who else we have in the chat here. We've got Simon. Hello, Simon. We've got Jamie. The Law Enforcer HD. All righty. Have I missed the Dreams live stream? Nope, that one's still coming. That's not tonight, though, but that's still coming. Thanks for reminding me about that, by the way. We got to do a Dreams live stream. All right, Simon. In a Neverland Chill some weeks ago, you mentioned a guy that was going to come on and talk about how he changed his life in magnificent ways. Has he been on? Yes. I think you were talking about Tamer. So that was episode 21. The remarkable journey of Tamer Begum. That's episode 19 and episode 21. So he was on twice, actually. So definitely check those out. Episodes 19 and 21, Tamer Begum. Awesome. Okay. Yes. All right. So let's have a little conversation about teachers. So this is an idea that actually came to me at this concert. So basically what ended up now that he's back, now that Derek Vincent Smith is back and making music, and he's been telling his story, now we have a little bit of an understanding of why he vanished. So basically, he went on a personal self-development enlightenment journey, and that led to him taking about 5 years off from music. and came back a changed man. I always appreciated the vibes that he would bring through his music, but I have to say, since he's been back, he's been on a whole new level. Really, really beautiful, wholehearted vibes coming through. Being a vessel and a transmitter of these vibes. And so he was talking about on stage. Actually, I've got a clip of it. He was talking about some of his teachers, and how like some of the people that he learned from that inspired his music. There's this one clip of him talking about how he was reading a book by Yogananda and also listened to an interview with Nikola Tesla, and just that space of like learning from Yogananda, and then also like having Nikola Tesla come in and speak about, it was like, he said it was like a 50-minute interview from 100 years ago. And he's just like sitting with this, what had been stirred up with that. And so he ended up taking that interview, that Nikola Tesla interview, and cutting it up and sampling it to make a song out of, and using that the muse of Nikola Tesla to inspire the music. And there's a little bit more to that story about how that developed, but the basic idea here is that it got me thinking about teachers, and in general, how, like, what the role of teachers is. Like, what is the role of a teacher? And it got me kind of thinking about and reflecting on my own journey and the different teachers that have come into my life at just the perfect moments to shine a light on exactly what I needed to see at that moment. And how, the teacher that was right for me at that time was right for me at that time, and not necessarily before or after. It's like, it feels inevitable that there's a series of teachers for each one of us that come into our lives exactly the right time, show us exactly what we need to see. It's like catching a reflection from a mirror that is positioned in just the most perfect spot, like calibrated, so that you just get that little glint off of the mirror. And there's something about that little glint off the mirror that teacher is, or sometimes the teacher is the mirror, sometimes what they're saying, you catch reflection what they're saying. It's like there can be some nuance to how that mirror is calibrated, but you catch this little glint off the mirror, and that little beam of light creates a breakthrough and essentially helps us move into a new perspective. It's like the illumination helps us see something that we didn't see before. And by virtue of seeing that thing, our perspective shifts. And as soon as our perspective shifts, a new possibility is unlocked. Through the shift of perspective, a new possibility is unlocked. And so that really is the role of a teacher, is to unlock a possibility in, we could say, a student, if we're going to use that paradigm of teacher-student. And so I was inspired tonight just to have a little conversation about this series of teachers, and to share a little bit about my series of teachers, and also to ask and invite you in the chat to share a little bit about your series of teachers. Because each of us, we have this map, this path that we're walking. And I feel like these teachers, these guides, they show up, and maybe they walk with us for a leg of the journey, and then some of them are long term, and they stay with us for a long time. Like Neville, I've been with Neville for a long time, 8 years. He's been a long-term, teacher, walking me through this leg of my path, leg of my journey. But there's other teachers that I was with for like maybe 2-3 years, and then moved on. I got what I needed, and I was able to, in a manner speaking, graduate. So we're gonna get into that a little bit, but first, I'm gonna open up my drink. What's up, Rachel? Hey, Jackie. Ikama. Hello, hello. And Frank. Oh, maybe Simon is talking about Frank. Hey, yeah, it is Frank. Frank, what are you doing next week at about 8 p.m. Eastern time? What are you doing? If you're Neville and chilling, that's the correct answer. Yeah, let me know. All right, so tonight we are drinking sap soda. I was sipping on this last week as well. Sap soda, literally made in trees. It's just sap, a little bit of carbonated water. So delicious. I love it. Great nutrients. Hey, what's up, Ray? Getting his drink ready. Absolutely. Okay. All right. I hope you all brought your beverages. I let you know. Tonight is definitely, every Neville and Chill is a beverage and chill night. We got to stay hydrated. So tonight we are going to say cheers in honor and recognition of all of our teachers. It's an important part of bringing this journey full circle. It's like an important part of like that circle of totality, that circle of completion, to acknowledge those souls who have served their purpose and helped us get where we are. So we honor our teachers and our mentors, and we understand that in honoring, we are grateful for and we honor those who have taught and mentored us. We also understand that inherent in that arrangement is also our responsibility to teach and mentor others so that the circle completes. Part of how we honor our teachers and mentors is by teaching and mentoring others, keeping that cycle going and turning. So, to all the teachers. What's up, Pilar? I discovered Neville's teachings through your voice. Thanks. I'm honored, Pilar. Neville's teachings. Yes, Neville is one of the teachers we're going to talk about tonight. But we're gonna kind of turn it back a little bit here. So I want to know in the chat, is there one particular teacher that stands out to you as that one little point of light that kind of ignited your path at the very beginning? Maybe you have one, maybe you don't. But if you do, I would like to know, who was that person? Drop it in the chat. Jamie says, I am raising my glass to Joe Dunning, my teacher. She recently passed away. May she rest in peace. To Joe. Frank says, Bill Donahue. Yes. For me, it was a man named Eric Pepin. Eric Pepin. I have a book about him here. It's called Bending God, and it's by Eric Robeson, but Eric Robeson is one of his students. So it's a book about Eric Pepin, the teacher, written by his student. And I met this guy in 2012. This is what he wrote when he signed the book. He said, Josiah, The universe is beyond imagination, but within reach. Embrace the profound effect of all transformation. Enter the flow. Eric Pepin, October 14th, 2012. So Eric Pepin was the founder of the Higher Balance Institute. And he wrote this book. It was an ebook that was floating around the internet in early days. And when I read the ebook, I came across it in a forum somewhere. And when I downloaded it and started to read it, something inside of me that long lay dormant began to awaken based on what I was reading. And it was unusual. It felt new. It felt like a new experience. I was a prolific reader in my youth, so I was definitely used to reading things, but to read something and have a deeper part of my being begin to be aroused by the words, that was a unique experience for me. And having that experience with this man's teachings led me to seek to learn more from him as a teacher. And that led to me, buying this book and going to one of his retreats in California. And reading his book was the first time that I ever had anyone suggest a purpose for life, a universal purpose for life that made sense to me. At that particular time in my life, I didn't really feel like there was much of a purpose. I couldn't see it at that time. And this man came along and said, well, the purpose of life, if there is one, is to experience. Like literally, we're here to have experiences in the physical form. Like that's why we have physical forms, is to experience what the world is like in physicality. And he said, really, the whole point or mission or goal or purpose, whatever word you want to kind of qualify this idea with, like if there is any of those things, it's to experience and it's to add beauty wherever you can. It's this idea of all of us are, have instruments, and it's being willing to play them in a way that is beautiful. Just add a little bit of color, add a little bit of beauty along this path that is creating experience. And there was something so profound and simple and beautiful about this concept. Reading that and sitting in it and integrating it, I felt something inside of me begin to relax. There was a part of me that was awakening, and there was another part of me that was relaxing. Like it was this release of tension. It was like, oh, actually, this suddenly makes sense. Like the universe, like this idea of like what existence is, what reality is. Like this is. I was actually started to get it. Like I was like, okay, this actually makes a lot of sense, and it started to bring me a feeling of peace. And I remember I was a manager at the time. I was managing a large team of people, and I remember in that role of manager, I was mentoring, and one of the younger people on my team, we were standing in the parking lot after a long day at work. And he kind of opened up to me about some things that he was struggling with. And I felt like in that moment, because these were some more philosophical, existential things that, under the stars late at night in this parking lot outside of work, that was the topic that came up. And I felt like I was actually equipped to be able to be a mentor, because I felt like what I had learned from this man, Eric Pepin, was a perspective that I could fully endorse. And I was able to kind of pass along. I was like, well, this is what I've been reading about. And this is, the key things that I think make sense, that I've learned, from my path and from, what I've been reading and learning and, lately. And I was able to really see how it impacted this other young man's experience as I shared it with him. And I really felt like it was kind of that first step, like it was that first step on that path of what has now become profound awakening. It's like this little easing into it. Is a gentle start. And then, actually, there's a lot I could say here, because this man actually, he showed up at like the timing was impeccable. Because if he had not shown up when he did, if I had not manifested him into my life when I did, I would have not been equipped in the way that I was equipped to handle what was to become one of the greatest moments of evolutionary pressure in my life. Because I went through, how all of us have the furnaces of affliction. I met this man, he came into my life through his teachings. I met him physically later, but like his teachings came into my life right before the biggest, most profound moment of evolutionary pressure, that when the furnace got the hottest that it had been yet in my life. Like, he showed up right before that. And if I had not had a little bit of peace in my soul, if I had not had a little bit of perspective on what life is, from the sage wisdom that he was able to convey to me, I'm not sure I would have survived that furnace. Furnace probably, I may not have made it through. So this man, in following his desire to share, to teach, to mentor, to be in that position, honoring his potential, honoring his gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, showing up at exactly the right time, enabled me to be able to weather what was coming, the storm that was coming, what would end up being it'll probably go down as the greatest storm of my life. This particular thing that I went through, and he was a big part of helping me batten down the hatches, in a manner of speaking, to prepare for that moment. Of course, I didn't know that moment was coming, but once it happened, it was really this wisdom and truth that I was able to ground into, and that I was able to make it through the furnace and come out the other side, for sure a changed man, but at least, still together. I went on to go to one of his retreats in California. And at that retreat, I witnessed a breaking of the fourth wall for the first time. I watched a person dematerialize and then rematerialize at one of his retreats. And that was something that at the time I didn't really think with my brain was possible. Obviously, my awareness, my consciousness was open to it. Otherwise, I would not have perceived the dematerialization, rematerialization. My consciousness was literally not allowed me to perceive that. So clearly I was open to it, but my brain, my logic was like not aware that was something that was possible. But I watched it happen, and I left that retreat with a very different perspective on what reality is. That was the first time I started to realize that reality is not physical like it seems. Like, someone can tell you that, and it's one thing, and then you can go and have an experience where you literally witness the unrealness of reality, and it hits a little different. And so I left that retreat with a very different understanding of what reality is and what is truly possible. And all of this is back in 2012. Right? So he predated Neville by about 4 years in my life. Okay, so I'm gonna take a pause from my storytelling here because I see the chat's filled in. Let's see what you all are saying here. Abraham Hicks, Lee Harris, and Neville. Ray says, intuition and deep, immovable knowing were my spark illuminating teachers as well. Kevin says, hey, Josiah, hope this finds you in good tidings of great joy. May I ask you, if you are to teach others, isn't that a trap? This means nobody needs to change, just myself. Yeah, Kevin. So that's a fantastic question, and you're pointing at what I believe is a very important distinction, right? So let's see. I think probably the best way to describe this is, there's here, I'll show the book again because that's the next comment. Could you please show the name of the book? The book is called Bending God. It's by Eric Robeson. Bending God. It's a thick book because it has so many stories in it. A lot of stories about what is possible. When your mind is free, what is possible, because he took people on adventures and did things with consciousness and awareness and the third eye and all this type of stuff that was pretty profound. So there's a lot of stories in it. That's why the book is so thick. But yes, so a guy like that, a teacher like that, so he can teach because he thinks that other people are wrong and need to know something that he's right about. Okay, that's one paradigm. That's not the paradigm he's in, but that's one paradigm that people can teach from. You don't know something that I know, and you need to know it, so let me transfer my knowledge to you. Okay, so that's one thing, and I'd say that's the part that's the trap. Okay, that's usually an ego trap. That's usually like I have all this knowledge, and I get something, and you don't get something, so let me lord my knowledge over you and teach you. I feel like that part's a trap. It's a trap of the ego. But I don't think all teachers are in that trap. I think that there's another place where teaching occurs, which is probably be a similar place that we would look at some of these, avatar beings and how they've taught. So avatar beings tend to teach from a place of love. It's a wisdom. It's not a I'm right, you're wrong. And we talk about that in the last couple of episodes of Neville and Cho. We've been talking about the polyverse. It's there is no right and wrong. It's infinite truths, and the ones that you choose are yours. The polyverse will show you, because the polyverse is a mirror or an echo chamber. It's actually both, a mirror and an echo chamber. Mirror for the light and echo chamber for the sound and light, holographic, 360-degree movie projecting from your state of being. The role of teacher that is not in a trap is the one that is simply a shower of the way, that is leading by example. And it's not from the ego trap. So when you classify it that way, the shower of the way, everyone is a teacher. It's not a special title when you kind of classify it that way. It's literally everyone can be your teacher if you choose to see that everyone can be your teacher. If you choose to connect to that vibration, that frequency where you're willing to accept lessons from everyone that you encounter, everyone can be your teacher. And it's simply because they're willing to show the way. I remember when I first started teaching in a metaphysical arena, one of the things that I had to go through was this feeling of like, well, what do I have to teach anyone? Like, what could I possibly have to teach anyone? Like, I'm, inherent in that statement is like, well, what do I know? What do I know that? And what helped me have the confidence to go ahead and teach, even though I was very aware that I could say, well, what do I have to teach anyone? Like the frame was, if I wait until I'm at the top of the mountain to hold up my torch, if you think about literally when you hold up a torch or a candle, right, or a source of light, right, it literally illuminates the space right around you. So if we conceptualize the journey of life as a twisting staircase up a giant mountain, if I hold up my torch, it's going to illuminate the next 3 or 4 steps and the past 3 or 4 steps. And to everyone who is below that or above that, it's just kind of a vague, nebulous point of reference, right? So if you're standing at the base of the mountain, you could see a couple pinpricks of light working your way up, but it is not going to help you not trip over the very next step, right? But if you have someone who's 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, who is willing to shine their light and lift up their torch, that pool of light will expand 3 steps up, 3 steps back. And all of the people who are 3 steps up, 3 steps back will benefit from that little pool of illumination. And so when I began to understand that concept, I began to realize that everyone always has something to teach. Everyone always has something to teach. And so rather than falling into the trap of I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough, or I'm not advanced enough, or I'm not evolved enough, I decided to take it from the perspective of I have gifts, skills, talents, and abilities. I have training in how to teach, like concepts in general, like education training. I've been trained as an educator, as a teacher. So why not just do what I can, teach from where I am, and see if I can help the people that are within a couple of steps of me on this path. Choose to hold up my light. And it's an extremely rewarding experience because no one learns the material more than the teacher. Like, that's literally what the final step of learning is, teaching. Just as when we sipped our beverage in honor of our teachers and our mentors, what I said was, we honor our teachers and our mentors, and we also understand that the ultimate honor of our teachers and mentors is also teaching and mentoring those around us, like continuing that circle, closing the circle, continuing the cycle, keeping it going, keeping it flowing, not letting the wisdom stop with us, but being willing to pass it on. That's really how we honor our teachers the most, by keeping that chain going. Okay, let's keep it going here. Shout out to Kyle Cease, Edward Art, Abraham Hicks, Josiah Brandt, Bashar, Brian Scott, Paulo Coelho, and Neville, of course. Jerry and Esther Hicks's readings led me to Neville. Wayne Dyer. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, and then hits the fan. Hits the fan. Yes, because in my polyverse model of reality, we always have exactly what we need at the time we need it. There's never a moment where we do not have our own back as consciousness, right? So my higher self always has my back. So my higher self has the back of my physicality. That's another way of saying that. So my higher self ensures that my physicality has what it needs at hand at all times. And so that wisdom that you're sharing there, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and then hits the fan, that's my higher self making sure that I'm equipped with plenty of wet wipes to clean up the mess. Jane Roberts, Wayne Dyer, Uel S. Anderson, Joe Dispenza. Elena says, I love the let's explore together as a style of teaching and sharing. So metaphysics is unique in this regard because, if I was teaching you, okay, so my other skill set of mastery is in the financial market. So if I were to sit down and I were to teach you about the futures market as an example, that would be what we call knowledge transfer. I know something, you would like to know something. Let me take knowledge out of my brain and assemble it in a way where you can ingest it into your brain. And so now you've built an equivalent knowledge is what I possess. Okay? Knowledge transfer. That's not how metaphysics works. Metaphysics is experiential. Some things you can learn through knowledge transfer. How to change a tire, right? Watch someone do it, have someone tell you to do it, and call your dad on FaceTime while you're on the side of the road, right? Metaphysics is not really like that. It's not a knowledge transfer. It's more of an illumination of a perspective. So to teach metaphysics, it's about helping people see it for themselves because it's an inward journey, right? So metaphysics in particular, I think, is the let's explore it together type of subject because it's an inward journey. So to truly know metaphysics, you have to know thyself. So that journey inward, no one else can really knowledge transfer that, but they can share from personal experience what has worked for them or realizations they've had or the thought processes leading up to realizations so that someone can benefit from a little bit of a roadmap for that inward journey, right? So it's like we do share a lot of, as individual incarnations, we do share some aspects of how our psyches are built or how our imaginations are built, how our consciousness operates and what it is. And so as we develop a lexicon for that, a language for that, kind of a legend for the map, I suppose. And then that becomes a guide for what ultimately must become personal experience, because you can just hear people talk about metaphysics and metaphysical ideas and concepts and consciousness all day long, but until you go into the silence to know for yourself, it will always be theoretical. I mean, really, this is why science struggles with what consciousness is. Like, the question of consciousness is a big issue in science right now. And I feel it's because it is an inward journey. Like, how do you share in a way that can be peer reviewed, something that can only be known by going into the silence within? I believe there are ways, and we will evolve into technologies that can explore some of these things in new ways. I think really the limitation that I'm speaking of in science is the limitation of awareness and thinking and level of consciousness, and not an actual. It's not a hard limitation. It's a soft limitation, meaning that as human culture shifts and evolves and changes, we will be able to explore consciousness in a more peer-reviewed type of way. But that's only going to happen as kind of the floating point of mass consciousness evolves. Jackie says, Josiah, that story is a whole Neverlandshell episode by itself. Need more details about that experience you had while on retreat. Okay, the dematerialization. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. I don't think we need to do a whole episode on it, but I will go ahead and share it just because, it's Neville and Chill. We got to get out the juice here. Okay. So Eric Pepin on retreat. We're at a retreat center in Monterey by the beach. I stayed at an Airbnb and like drove into this retreat center each day. It was a 4-day retreat. It's a group of maybe 30 people. Came from all over. And it started off with a little bit of of teaching, but it kind of quickly went in a little different direction. I don't know how much of it he planned. He being the retreat leader, Eric, I don't know how much of it he planned. I think at some point we kind of went off script a little bit, because I remember at one point he was like, all right, guys, I really feel like we have a great group dynamic going on here. And I'm feeling this urge to explore, because to get a group of people and to like really have some cohesion, some harmony. Like, I mean, the vibes were really good at this retreat. Like everybody was getting along really well and like felt very much on the same page. And, it's just a lot of wisdom, a lot of, it's really kind of a unique setup. And so he was like, hey, so acknowledging that. And then he was like, hey, I kind of want to get into a little bit of experimentation and try some things. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I just want to try. And so if you all are up for it, I have some ideas about some experiments that we could do with consciousness together as a group in some of these sessions for the events. And so, we were obviously there for it. I mean, when your metaphysics teacher says, hey guys, let's experiment, I think most people would be like, okay, let's do it. And so that's what we did. We were like, yeah, all right. So one of the afternoons, this is like it was probably went like 4 hours. It's like after dinner, I think it was like late into the evening. I remember the room was dimly lit, and that was, I think, a big part of it. So we did this deep dive meditation, and he had this speaker system. It was like a surround sound speaker system in the room, and he had this weird trance-like ambient soundtrack going on. Not a clear beat, not really a clear even focus to the sounds. It was just like kind of eerie and otherworldly, and he kind of set the tone that way, like eerie and otherworldly, and the lights were very dim. You could still see the people, but the lights were very dim. And we had been meditating together for a couple of days at this point. I think this was day 3 of 4 of the retreat. And so the space was really set, and there was a lot of like literal energy in the room. And I remember we were actively filling the room with energy through these meditations. We were actively like charging the room. And so he was like, okay, let's do some experiments. And so one of the experiments that he did is he split up everybody that was there into groups of 3. And he set us up where it was 2 people facing each other in chairs, and the third person sitting in the middle between the 2 people who are facing each other and pointing towards the center of the room. So 2 people facing each other, and then the third person was in the middle facing the center of the room in a chair. And so he led us through this process where basically the goal of the 2 people that were facing each other was to create a connection and to dematerialize the person that was sitting in between us, so that just the connection was flowing between the 2 people. So it was me and this woman sitting across from me, and then there was a woman sitting in between facing the center of the room. So the job of me and the other disappearer Dematerialize. So there's the dematerializer and the dematerializee. Okay. A person being dematerialized. So the dematerializers, our goal was to create a connection with each other in this space of meditation and connect to the third eye and to feel that there was nothing in between us. It was just empty space in between us, even though there was a person sitting there in the physical. And then the mission of the person who was sitting there in the physical was to become nothing, pure presence, like just pure awareness, no physicality. That was the idea here. And so he's walking us into this, and he's coaching us on it, and like this weird, eerie ambient soundtrack is playing, and it's been several days of really intense meditation and metaphysics and energy and everything. And so I'm sitting here, and I got this woman across from me, and this person that's supposed to dematerialize, and I'm open to it at this point, even though I don't know what's going to happen. I'm at least open to it. I did not have any walls of resistance. I was like, okay, let's see what happens. It's literally coming from a place of curiosity, which is so important, to just like have that door just a little bit open, like, hey, what could possibly happen? And so I'm like really connecting in with this woman across from me and ignoring the person sitting in between us. And so I was like really tuning into this other dematerializer's energy and like really feeling her and feeling that there was nobody, like just feeling that it was literally just her and me, nobody sitting in between. And so I'm doing that with my eyes closed. I'm like really getting clear. And we get a few minutes in, and I get this idea. I'm like, I'm going to check and see whether the dematerializee is still visible. And so I popped my eyes open. And what I saw was the outline of the woman that was seated in between. I could see the outline of her form, but I noticed that it was shimmery, kind of like when you blow a bubble, right? I think of bubbles. You're just at a concert and people were blowing bubbles, right? So you think of like that shimmery, like oily kind of polychromatic shimmer on the surface of a bubble. Her outline of her energy had that polychromatic, shimmery type of appearance to it. And so I noticed that, and I was like, okay, something's happening, because she didn't look like that before we went into meditation. Like her body got all polychromatic, like something's changing, something's happening. So I was like, okay. So I like redoubled my effort. So I closed my eyes again, and I was like, we're going to make this woman disappear. We're going to like click her out. Hopefully she makes it back okay. Her family might be upset, but like, we're going to see if we can click her out. So I like redoubled my efforts. I like got a little bit excited. Just like a little bit of energy picked up when I was like, oh, polychromatic woman. Okay. So I closed my eyes again, and I refocused, and I like pushed deeper into this imaginal act of just me and this woman and nobody in between us, like literally causing the person in between us to dematerialize. And so a few minutes after that, I checked again. And this time when I opened my eyes, the woman had become translucent. She had started to dematerialize, and I was able to clearly see the entire body of the woman who was my fellow dematerializer seated across from me. Okay, so before, when the dematerializee was fully physical, my view of the other dematerializer was obscured by the body of the woman sitting in between us. Okay, this second time when I opened my eyes to check, the woman sitting in between us was translucent, still polychromatic, but much lighter now. It was like she was phasing in and out of the physical, visible spectrum dimension. And so at that point, when I opened my eyes, I was able to clearly see my fellow dematerializer seated across from me. And so that's when I had the goosebumps and the hair starting to stand up on the back of my neck, because that's when I realized that this was undeniable. It's no longer like, oh, well, maybe not. Oh, she got a little polychromatic. I was like, no, she's actually dematerializing. Like, she's actually starting to phase out of the physical, visible spectrum. When he brought us back out of that meditation, I asked the woman that was now rematerialized. So he brought us back out. She was no longer shimmery. She came back fully physical. And we kind of like, okay. And then I asked her, I was like, hey, I saw you with my open physical eyes start to dematerialize and become translucent, like you were phasing out of this dimension. And I explained the shimmery thing and everything. And I said, what did you feel? And she said, that was the most silent my mind has ever been. She literally went into a place, per her own testimony description of what happened. Her goal was to become all things nothing, like nothing, all everything, nothing, just pure awareness, right? Like completely like phase out of physical identity. And she like withdrew her awareness out of her body to just become pure awareness. And she actually hit this place that is just no thought, the no mind place. Okay. And there's a word for that. I don't remember what it is in the moment. It's a yogi term for that. Is it samsara? What is it? It's that, yeah, that place beyond thinking, that just silent. So she reached that during the meditation and held it for a sustained amount of time. And so I was like, so you did us dematerializing you make that easier? And she was like, I think so, because that was the most silent I have ever experienced my mind being since I've had this body. So that really got me thinking about, as you can imagine, a lot of things. I was like, okay, what is the body? What is the mind? What is consciousness? What is reality? What is the visible spectrum? What is like materializing, dematerializing? Like how, like her, like how much of her physical body is created by her awareness of her physical body? And then like the fields, right? Because I'm putting out a biofield and projecting an intention of helping her dematerialize. The other woman is back to me, so creating a field in between us, like a little portal in the polyverse for her to dematerialize through. So it just cracked open a whole new paradigm for me. And I didn't understand it. I was still so young in my journey. And even today, I can't say I understand it better. I'm going to say I fully get it now. I mean, there's so much to learn about things like that. But it put a crack in what was originally the pavement of what I thought reality was. Like I had like a pretty solid idea, I thought, of what the physical universe was. Like I thought it was real. I thought there was a physicality. I thought it was, something physical and hard and tangible to it. And I, had a sense of comfort and security with that. But after that experience, I was like, okay, things are not necessarily what they appear. There's parts of the universe that are very much a question and curiosity that I don't know. So like added a huge question mark to a whole part of my reality that I thought I somewhat understood, from traditional education about what the material universe is. So it kind of put a little splinter, a little crack in the glass ceiling of my mind and allowed me to start to, okay, maybe I don't know really what reality is. Like maybe reality is far more mysterious than what I could imagine. So had that experience. The other experience that I had was the eye gazing. We did that at the retreat too. And I was able to see like this person that I was doing it with. I was able to see per the intention of the meditation. He was like guiding this. Like the point was to see this, but I was able to see it very clearly. Some of the past incarnations of the sentience that was, currently in a physical incarnation, but like that sentience hadn't always been that body, in that body. Sentience had worn other bodies as well. And so through this guiding process, whatever, we were to invite the person seated across from us to show us energetically some of their other incarnations. And then, we kind of like went through this whole process and then shared what we had seen with the other person. And, so like I took turns with this other person. So like they saw a bunch of the characters that I have played over the eons. I saw a bunch of characters they had played over the eons, and just like kind of shared our impressions of that. So it was just kind of like an introduction into a world that I hadn't explored in that way prior to that time. Since that time, because I had the introduction and then became open to it, I've had many experiences along those lines. I will say to this day, though, that's the only time I've witnessed someone consciously dematerialize and rematerialize in that type of way. It's the only time I've tried it, right? In that type of way. It's a very unique thing that we did. There's also a woman there that had a very intense physical healing as a result of laying hands on her. But like that one didn't hit me in the same way. I'd seen stuff like that at church before. So it didn't really like hit me quite in the same way as the dematerialization thing hit me. That one I left with a bunch of question marks in my mind of like, okay, what is actually going on here? Right? Okay, so that's the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Continuing with the chat here. Reverend Ike. Reverend Michael Beckwith. Orlena has a really fascinating question here. She says, so if you're not teaching, would you say that they really know the material of any subject? Okay, so I'll say it this way. So in the courses that I've taught at the School of Imagination, consistently the way the curriculum works is we go through this process of introducing these concepts and working our way through them. And it's intended to be experiential, meaning that if you show up and you do it and your heart's in it, and you're actively engaged, you are going to experience things from these prompts. And then the final step, if you make it all the way through the course, in order to graduate from the course, the final step is you have to teach one of the ideas that you learned in the course to someone else. And the reason why the course is set up that way is to emphasize exactly the point that you're making in this question, Elena. It's so that we complete the cycle of learning, because the cycle of learning completes with the ability, ideally more than just the ability, the actual, ideally the cycle completes when you teach someone else, right? It's nice to have the ability, but when you actually do it, that's like acting on the ability. Yeah, so that's why we structure it that way. To complete the course, you have to teach one of the concepts from the course, and it's to help you feel like, well, it's to give you proof of your own transformation, right? Because before you took this course, you probably would not have felt confident or comfortable or equipped to be able to teach it. But now that you've gone through that training, to come out on the other side and to have that confidence to be able to share it with somebody else, and then this, so they each student then has the opportunity to teach it to another student. So it's a friendly, safe, cooperative environment. But when they have that experience and then they carry that confidence with them out into the world, now we're creating ripple effects, because now we have, thousands of empowered teachers who don't just know with their mind, they know with their lives, and they're confident in being able to present it in a competent way to help others by holding up their light. Simon says, Coelho. Yes, the writer of The Alchemist. Yes, so Ray is a big fan of The Alchemist. Yes. A couple other people have talked to me about The Alchemist also. I need to read it again. I feel like it came through my hands a couple of years ago, and I don't think I finished it. I think I might need to go back and just because I think there's a legendary quality to it. We'll say it that way. It's a legendary quality to it. Emile Coué? I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry. But Emile, one of the first and often overlooked. Okay. Good. Beam me up, Scotty. Yes, Jackie. What's up, Michelle? Hogwarts meets Sunday Mystery School. Yes. Hey, Bonnie. Moon Bunny. So Moon Bunny's my swirl sister. So Moon Bunny was on the live stream for that concert I was telling you all about. That was really fun. I enjoyed sharing that with you all. When I get excited about something, it brings me so much joy to share it. And I'm not really attached to whether or not any of you watch the links that I send, but if you do, you get nominated to be my swirl brothers and sisters. So there's that. Okay. Jane says, we're all different in our own way of manifesting. Would you care to share with us your process to attain a manifestation? How do you attain agreement, acceptance, and other aspects? From Jim. I'm going to put a pin in this one. I might come back to it. Read The Alchemist 3 times. Awesome book. Excellent. Eckhart Tolle. Yes. Emile Coué. All right. As in cool. All right. Emile Coué. Excellent. Yes. Moon Bunny, Swirl Sister. Orlena, Swirl Sister. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. All right, Jim. Your process to attain a manifestation. How do you attain agreement, acceptance, and other aspects? Okay. So talk about this a lot. And every time I'm asked to talk about it again, what happens in my own consciousness is I feel like it's an invitation to simplify and maybe say it better. No pressure, right? Like say it more clearly than I've ever said it before. So that's why I had to chew on it for a second when you asked that. I was like, okay, let's see if I can say it more simply than I've ever said it before, more succinctly. I think, there's something to be said about simplicity. Okay, so my own process to attain a manifestation. Okay, so at this stage of my journey, and I qualify what I'm about to say this way because it has not always been this way for me. I have experience before it was like this for me, and now I'm in my current experience. At this stage of my journey, for most things, it's very simple. Because I know the power of imagination, and because I have accumulated a large body of personal evidence, I don't need anybody else to tell me that it works because I know that it works. I know that my imagination creates reality because I've used my imagination to create my reality. I've documented so many examples of that for my own personal library of evidence. And so because of that, now for most things, when I desire to create a manifestation, it's a very simple process. I simply jump over the actual event in my mind and determine what would tangibly result from the event occurring. Okay, so example, Derek Vincent Smith throwing crystals from his beautiful stage display into the crowd. And instantly I'm like, one of those needs to come home with me. Okay, so strong desire. I want one of these crystals. Traveled with him all over the country. Crystals hold information. You get the idea, right? Very awesome artifact to have from a concert, particularly at the end of the tour, right? Like it's just, there's so much there. So it's like, one of these crystals needs to be in my house. Strong desire. There's a million ways that could happen. So I just jumped right over the how, because that's not my job. And I was like, how would I know that one of those crystals is coming home with me? If I held it in my hand. So just in my imagination, I held the crystal in my hand. Thank you, Derek. I didn't think about, how is this going to happen? Am I going to be in the right place? How is he going to know to give it to me? How am I going to get one? None of that. I just hopped right over all of those questions. And I was like, what would be the one way that I would know that this desire was fulfilled? I would hold the crystal in my hand. So my imagination, I just held it in my hand. And then I just let it go. And the next time he threw crystals from the stage, he threw one directly to my partner, Carrie. And after the show, she put it in my hand and I got to hold it in my hand. Right? Super, super easy at this stage of my journey because I've accumulated so much evidence. If I was in a place like I used to be years ago where I had a lot of doubt because I was like, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. It works for some things, not for others. Then there's this process of kind of building up faith, reminding myself, thinking about other times I've been successful to prime my state. Okay? So maybe someone who's listening to this is like, well, it's great that you're at the point now where you have so much faith that like you don't even have to think about it. You just immediately go to the end and hold it in your hand and it's done. But what if I'm not there yet? Okay, so this is what I would say. If you're not there yet, then do some priming. Okay, so the first step of priming would probably be to sit down and write down, make a list, your own personal library of evidence of all of the things that you have consciously manifested in your life. Consciously manifested, meaning that you had a desire and you were like, I desire X. And you made a decision from the place of your state of being, I am the person who has whatever that thing is, okay? And then that thing successfully materialized in your life and now you have it or you got it, okay? Write that down as an example. The idea being that next time you have a desire like that and you need to prime to get into that place of pure faith, now you can have some material to read and reflect back on to help you build that faith so that you can move into a place where it becomes easier, right? So you remind yourself of the times that you've had success in the past. Okay, so now a natural question along this path is, well, what about the times that I failed? Okay, what about the times that I failed? Okay, so failure isn't really a thing. This is something that I think we all learn on this path, that failure isn't really a thing. When we try something and it doesn't work out as intended, there is data that comes out of that, okay? So failure implies that it was just, didn't work and it's done and there was nothing, that really came out of it. But to try and to learn, something did come out of that. So if you're like, oh, well, yeah, I do have times that worked. I also have times that I failed or it didn't work. Okay. It's important to reframe those times that didn't work as opportunities to learn and gather data. Okay. So usually when something doesn't work, it's because from a pure Neville teaching, this is literally what he says. He says failure is a result of not being able to make it natural. Okay? It's a naturalness thing. For me, it was perfectly normal and natural to hold that crystal in my hand. Okay. But let's say that I saw Derek's tour bus and I was like, I want Derek to gift me his tour bus, right? His $2 million tour bus. I want him to give me the keys and say, here, Josiah, you can be the new owner of my tour bus. Okay. That doesn't feel natural to me at all. I'm not naturally the owner of some rock star's tour bus. Okay. So that, if I decided that's what I wanted, that would take more alignment. I would have to go through a process of really aligning my consciousness with being the man who was gifted a tour bus. Do you see the difference? So it's like holding the crystal in my hand. Yeah, no big deal at all. Like, yeah, it's total, nothing to change there. Like, it's easy, perfectly natural. But something like the bizarre example of the tour bus, definitely a stretch. Not something that feels natural to me in this moment. I also do not have the desire. But if I did have the desire and it was a true desire, I would have to move in my state. So I think this is where your question is coming in about how do you attain agreement and acceptance? Okay, so this is where it goes a little bit deeper into the manifestation process. So let's say that I did want something that was outside of the naturalness of my current state. Okay. Then it's a process of changing the configuration of my state of being, which also there's an aspect of your personality that changes when you change your state of being. Okay, so your state of being is what determines what's natural for you and what's not natural for you. So if I had to completely change states, one of the things that I would do and have done in the past is I would find other people who are in a similar state to the state that I desire to be in. And I would look to them as examples. Okay, this is like if you are an actor in Hollywood and you're studying a character that you're going to bring to life in a screenplay, in a film, you know, like you read about actors, you know, you hear about actors doing this, right? Like they need to be a stockbroker and you play a stockbroker or something, right? So they'll go and intern at a stockbroker office, you know, for a week to like really get into the energy of it and like really understand like what happens at a broker's office and get the lingo and how the people hold themselves, or, you know, like the how they carry this, is the body language, you know, the lexicon, the jargon, like just like the energetic feel of it. And these, you know, actors who are very gifted at what they do, they're able to shapeshift into different states by doing this study. Okay, so if I were to give life to a new state of being for myself, I would do a similar process. I would find someone who's already animating that state, and I would take cues from them in terms of how does that state experientially animate? And then I would go deeply into the silence of my own being and begin to install programs that begin to align me with this new state of being. Okay? Install the programs, because a state of being is very different from an object. Okay, so a state of being is a collection of habits and patterns of behavior, whereas an object is just an object. Okay, so if I'm manifesting a change of state, that means that my patterns of thinking, my habits, and behaviors are changing. So that requires installing new programs. Okay, so that process of installing new programs gets a little bit deeper and a little bit more nuanced and probably beyond the scope of this conversation. But hopefully at least that shines a little bit of light on what the process is and what you would need to do if you decided you wanted to do a large change in your life as opposed to something more natural and small, like manifesting an object or meeting someone, or something that's like a little simpler, right? Kue. Okay, Kue. We're still trying to pronounce this name, y'all. Kue. All right. We'll get it. We'll get it somehow. Okay. All right. Teachers. All right. So let's continue this teacher's journey a little bit here. I feel like there's a little bit more to say. Okay. So there comes a time. There comes a time in the journey of everyone who is on this path. It's actually a moment in the journey where we consciously acknowledge and express gratitude to our teachers. I feel it's a stage of maturation. So, while on the surface level, I leave this retreat and I'm like, hey, thank you for, putting a little bit of a crack, in the plate of my reality so that I could, really start to dream into bigger things than what I thought was, possible before. Thank you for that. So I was grateful, right? And then it's like 14 years, trying to do math here, 12 years later. Yes, 12 years later, almost exactly. Now I'm in the place where I look at that experience and now I'm like, no, seriously, thank you. Like paying respect, like paying homage to the teacher, like, thank you. Thank you for your service. And it's a different level of appreciation. So that's why I say it's like a maturation. Like you reach this place where you graduate, you're like, and you look back over your life and you see how pivotal each of these people, they're characters. They came into your movie at exactly the right time and they played their part. And there's this place that we reach where we acknowledge that and we're like, thank you. Like seriously, thank you. I didn't even know at the time how pivotal my experience of you would end up being for my life. Like, how could we know, right? But now looking back, now that we see it, we say, thank you. And so this is, I believe, an important part of the journey. And that's kind of the spirit in which we're doing this live stream tonight, is like reflecting on that and like really communicating our gratitude and appreciation to those people who played their parts. And it's they show up in a myriad of ways. Some of the parts are very, we're very amicable to the teachings. And so it's like, easeful and graceful. This dude just, brings a bunch of people into the room and, helps us dematerialize each other and teaches us about life being, the point of life being to have experiences and create beauty along the way, and then disappears. And yeah, that's all cool. Not all teachers show up that way. Some teachers come, with clubs, right? And they kind of, it can be a little different experience. Some teachers come and they light fires under our butts, right? Point is, they do what we need them to do for us to reach that next level. And that is what we are grateful for. It's not about the how, it's about the fact that they did, right? So I want to make this process of honoring our teachers kind of broad in that way. Like, it's not just a certain type of teaching. Like, there's some people that come in and, they bring a hurricane with them, and what's left on the other side, is like exactly what we needed, even if we weren't real thrilled about it at the time. So that can happen as well. Eric Roberson wrote the book. Eric Pepin And then for me, I think after Eric Pepin, I kind of graduated from his teachings. And that was when I was introduced shortly thereafter to Esther Hicks, or the teachings of Abraham Hicks. And that was the first time that I really heard anybody talk like how Abraham speaks through Esther. It's really my first time being exposed to the idea of channeled teachings. And I found it on YouTube, and I was just like listening to all these videos and all these recordings of Esther speaking live and hearing all of her stories. And at first it felt like I was listening to a different, like a foreign language. It's like, what is even happening? It's like, Abraham, but it's like, this woman's voice, but she's talking from the third person about herself. Like, what even is this? Like, this is a little, okay. Right. But I stuck with it, even though my initial reaction was like, I don't know what's happening right now. The vibe, the frequency, I was like, okay, there's something here. Stick with it. And over time, it began to seep in. And I began to understand some things about, what the vortex is, some things about, some of these basic ideas of how to manage our energy. I feel like that's what Abraham is here to teach us, how to manage our energy as creators. In a very broad sense, that's how I would categorize those teachings, how to manage our energy. And so I began to learn. And then that paved the way to get into some of the more esoteric teachings, kind of went more into the manifestation side of things. Genevieve Berend, her book, Your Invisible Power, was a game changer for me. There's something just so powerful about that book. And that book was the setup to being introduced to Neville. So I listened to that audiobook, Genevieve Berend, Your Invisible Power. And it was literally the last chapter of that book when the video ended and YouTube auto-played the next video. And that was the moment that I heard Neville's voice for the first time. And within seconds, I knew that something was happening. I remember I was actually standing at the sink and I had my headphones in and I was washing dishes and my hands were wet. And I knew the Genevieve Berend video was ending, and I didn't usually let YouTube do the autoplay thing. But because my hands are wet and I was in the middle of washing dishes, I decided to just let the video end and the next video start. And so I'm standing there, my hands in the sink, my hands are wet, and I hear Neville's voice for the first time. And I'm like, what is this? Because you can immediately, listening to those old school recordings, you can immediately tell something's going on. You can immediately tell that it's literally recorded on a phonograph machine. Like they're literally making a record of it. And someone brought a portable phonograph machine to his lectures to record him in the 50s, the 40s, the 50s as he's speaking. So you can hear the audio artifacts of that. So it's like, okay, something's happening. I feel like I'm like, listening through a window to another era. And I was, 80 years ago. And so that started the Neville part of my journey. And the Neville part of my journey was there have been teachers since Neville, but Neville was the man who introduced me to my own teacher, like my inner teacher. So that rather than looking to the outside for sources of information, it was Neville that really taught me to go inside to learn. And so since Neville, while I do still obviously learn from Neville and I teach Neville and, I share Neville and all this type of stuff, at this point in my journey, I learn more from my spirit than I do from anyone on the outside. I learned more from the counsel of my own spirit. And it was really Neville that pointed me inward in that way and taught me that I don't really need anyone else per se. That doesn't mean other people don't play their parts. I'm very grateful for the parts of the people playing. Like I said, there have been teachers since that I've learned things from. But there's, again, kind of like this graduation that occurs where we really begin to move in and embrace our own power. And it was Neville that really was a powerful catalyst on my journey to graduating in that way. Elena, how could I forget washing the dishes with such a pivotal moment like that? It's literally burned into my memory. It's one of those moments, unforgettable, and planned before the foundations of time. That's why my face was the way that it was, planned before the foundations of time. Yes, it's a moment that would echo. Yeah. Also, want to shout out sort of some of my teachers, not necessarily, or I guess less in a metaphysical sense. Sort of. I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to try to qualify it too much. But I had a yoga teacher training in 2018. 200 hours. So it's yoga. So it's YTT 200 in Costa Rica with a yoga teacher of teachers. And it was her first time teaching yoga teachers. And she did a phenomenal job. She did such a good job. And I know that there was doubt and questioning of, do I have what it takes? I'm young in my practice myself, and here I am trying to teach other teachers. But she showed up in such a beautiful way, and she embodied what she was there to teach. And that experience was such a catalyst in my life, such a profound catalyst in my life. Her being willing to leave her comfort zone in this way, to be a teacher of teachers. And that's exactly what it was. She was leaving. And I think that's probably a good thing when people leave their comfort zone to do this sort of thing, as opposed to like being a little too comfortable with it. I think it's good when people, kind of put themselves out there in a way. I think it says something about the teacher. And she was willing to do it. And she did it. And I manifested the trip. I manifested the trip to Costa Rica for this 6-week training in the jungles by falling asleep hearing the sounds of the jungles, because I knew that that's what would happen if I was able to manifest this trip. So I had to manifest a seat in the class, and I had to manifest the money for the class. I did not have the money for the class at that point. But I knew I had just found Neville about 2 years earlier. So I knew that I could manifest all of this. I just had to go to the end. And since I didn't really know what the end of yoga teacher training was like, I just put myself in the jungle and listened to the sounds. Costa Rican jungle has very unique sounds at night. So I just put myself there, and I would fall asleep in my loft in the Northeast US, in the middle of downtown city with trucks going by all night. Very different physical environment, but in my imagination, I was falling asleep to the sounds of the insects in the jungle. And out of that, I manifested, of course, the seat. And also, I ended up finding a gift card with exactly the amount of money that I needed to pay for the class. I was just in my closet, and I was going through some things, and I lift up this little card. I'm like, wait a second. And I checked the balance on it, and it was the exact number that I needed to pay for the class. That's the how. That's how the how manifested. How I was able to pay for the class. Through that imaginal act of sleeping in the jungle. So I got there, I went through yoga teacher training. It changed my life. Not only from the physical practice of it, because I was not really practicing yoga. I didn't really understand really much of anything about yoga at the time. When I went to yoga teacher training, I just knew that it was the right move, because when I was invited, I had a strong inner knowing that it was for me. It's like, this is for me. And so I just trusted that, even though I didn't, I wasn't like super into yoga. I didn't really have a desire to be a yoga teacher, but I knew it was for me. So I just went along with the desire, and it started sleeping in the jungle in my imagination and manifested the means. And so I got there, I went through the training. I learned a lot about everything. And I also was introduced to a new realm of my skills. Like there was something that was unlocked in the jungle during that 6-week intensive. I found a part of myself that is ancient. And that part of myself was awoken during this time. It had been sleeping for a very long time. It's a part of myself that transcends my current incarnation. It's a part of myself that I've brought with me from incarnation to incarnation over and over again. It's an ancient part of myself. And it slept until the yoga deck in the jungle of Costa Rica. And on that yoga deck, it awoke. And that changed the trajectory of my life, and is very much the reason why I'm here today. So big shout out to the teachers who maybe aren't sure they're ready to teach, and yet humbly embark along the path anyways. Because the truth is, we always have something to share with another. And if we just wait until we're ready, we do a disservice to all of the people that could learn from us right now. So, shout out to Mandy, my yoga teacher. Appreciate your service. Thank you. Thank you for your gifts. Avery Kalapa has been a resident teacher in my path who oozes unconditional love. Yes. My Qigong teachers, Lee Holden, Nick Wafra, inspired me to do my teacher training and access a different layer of peace for myself post-pandemic. Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. So, final thoughts for tonight. I believe that the series of teachers is inevitable. I don't think it's ever just one. I think that it's people who embody states that can teach us showing up at the divinely appointed hour to shine a light on what we need to see right then, to help us take the next step in our life with wisdom. And sometimes the teachers are with us for a while, and sometimes they're with us just for a moment. But regardless of the length of time that they are with us, we honor their impact. We honor not just their impact, but also their willingness to serve. And we bring it full circle by understanding that we also play this part for others in our lives. Even if we never, hang a shingle that says teacher, right? Even if we never, aspire to teach anyone, we're always teaching through our energy, through our embodiment, through our state. It's just people are always going to learn from our energy. That's just so we all are teaching always, really. So really, to honor our teachers who embrace their role consciously and say, you know what, whatever I have to give, I'll give it. We honor them by doing the same. Whatever I have to give, I give it. And that's how we keep the cycle going. And that's how we keep the world turning. That's how we keep evolution evolving and playing our conscious part in it. And it's not always, 6-week trainings. It's not always, dematerialization retreats. Sometimes it's just listening. Like really listening. Like some of the best teachers don't even really say much at all. They just really listen. And sometimes all we really need is for someone to really listen. Just that act of being witnessed where we are. A lot of times that's enough. That's the catalyst. Teaching by being. Yes, viewer who is not AI. I don't know what to call you other than I ain't AI. Yes, I am feeling a little bit more open tonight. I think it's just all those good vibes I had over the weekend and just kind of being in a reflective state. But I'm glad that you're enjoying it. So cheers for that. Yes. Cool. Okay. I'm feeling complete, y'all. I feel like we have honored our teachers tonight. I feel like having a little bit of a moment to think back. I felt a lot of you doing it with me, even as I was telling my stories. I could feel a lot of you just kind of thinking back on all of the people that have shined their light on your path at just the right moment, and just like really feeling appreciation for them. So I'm glad we were able to do this together tonight. Thank you all for joining me on that. I think it's a beautiful thing. And let's honor their service by also being willing to be of service. If I've got it, I'm willing to give it. Colleen, excellent. All right, Frank, you're on next week. Big changes in your life. You're going to share them. Sounds good. Let's do it. All right, my friends. Sunday Mystery School is back this weekend. We're continuing with the question and answer session from the Sunday Mystery School community. Very much looking forward to having that. Jackie is asking about the Neville and Chill regarding dreams. I'm definitely down to do that. Remind me, what is the trajectory of that conversation so that I can assemble it for you? What exactly do we desire to explore regarding dreams? Please let me know. But anyways, yes. So Sunday Mystery School is back on Sunday, noon Eastern Standard Time. Questions from the Neville community. We are continuing with that. And then we'll be back for Neville and Chill with Frank. Yes, lucid dreaming. And we'll get that lucid dreaming conversation going too. Now I'm starting to remember. Yeah, we said we were going to talk about lucid dreaming and some of those gamma state experiences. Very good. Okay. All right. Until next time, my friends, imagine wisely. Have a great night, everyone. And we'll see you all again soon.